Hello and welcome to FinTech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today on the show, I have Adrian Johnstone, co-founder and president of Practifi. Practifi is an advisor-centric CRM that was developed on the Salesforce platform, but is not Salesforce itself, and specifically has made a name for itself in terms of leveraging that advantage to basically build better automations, workflows, and tools for advisors. And with that, here's my interview with Adrian. Adrian, thanks for getting the time today.
Oh, absolute pleasure, Jason. I'm excited to get the chance to have a chat.
Yes, my pleasure. So Adrian Johnstone of Practifi. Tell us about Practifi.
Yeah, so Practifi is, I guess we use the term performance optimization platform. So everything from CRM, heavy workflow automation, deep insights and analytics power, built specifically for advisors. We use Salesforce as a chassis, but we're actually a product sitting on top, none of that nasty overlay stuff.
Yep. So that's an important distinction there. So for people who are not aware, Salesforce overlay is when you basically buy Salesforce, but then you also through a reseller. But really what they're doing is someone's put over top of the normal Salesforce interaction, all the fields, all the interactions, everything you would want. But you've gone deeper than that. And instead of basically doing that, you have the entire Salesforce back-end system, which you can actually build on top of. And you built your own custom CRM basically on top of that. So it's kind of like, for lack of a better term, you know, how people build entire companies on AWS. It's just one level higher.
That's right. Yeah. So what we've done is said, well, what's the most scalable, most powerful platform available? And we identify that as Salesforce, and it's fantastic. But we understand that for most firms, particularly advice firms, it's a huge lift to then take that platform, bring in consultants, maybe start with an overlay that accelerates a bit of the journey that you've got to build to do. So what we did was took that and we built a whole product on top. So we use the best parts of the Salesforce ecosystem. We can connect out into the App Exchange, do those sorts of good things. But actually, we've taken away the need for that big build entirely by building our own product.
And as someone who basically has gone on that journey for years, I know the toll it takes, but it's also, and it's productive, it's great, but having something purpose built versus generic from day one is a big advantage for anyone starting out from day one. Excellent. So, okay, talk to me about the history of the company. How did Practifi come to be?
Yeah, so we, as you can hear, I'm Australian. So we started a long way down in the most regulated market in the world, and we really looked at the fact that advisors were typically using pretty outmoded technology. So where they had a CRM, they were often kind of pretty legacy, or they were struggling with big generic platforms and trying to work their way through that. But we also understood that most of the tools that were available really only thought about the advisor. They didn't think about the other roles in the organization and what was needed. A lot of the CRM offerings were a little more in the Rolodex. And so we really kind of came at it and said, well, how do you run the business? And this is why we call ourselves a performance optimization platform. Is when you look at an advice firm, how do you run that end to end? How do you take that and look at every process that you need to happen? Compliance, back office finance, operations, client-facing advice. How do you bring the power to all of those different roles? And so we really just set about solving for that problem. And it's been quite a journey along the way. And of course, the advantage of working with a product provider like us is that the industry keeps changing, and we keep updating the product. We passionately pursue innovation. Whereas, of course, if you go build it yourself, unfortunately, as you've done there, Jason, you have to keep paying to build it.
Unfortunately, yes, but yeah. But I mean, yeah, there's an advantage to having it specifically the way you want, but at the same time, there is a burden, right? And a burden that most people are not going to want to undertake.
Yeah. And look, we don't stop you from that customization and configuration journey. You can do that on Practifi just as you can do it with Salesforce. You're just starting from a vastly more advanced position.
Absolutely. Okay. So you decided to do this. You saw that opportunity. Talk to me about what the benefits of the product are beyond CRM. I mean, CRM, as we know, people will come to me all the time and say, oh, what's the best CRM for me to use? And my response is, look, depends on the function. If you're going to use it as a Rolodex, use the cheapest thing you can find, because frankly, it's not worth paying big money for anything that's more than a Rolodex. If you're going to actually try to automate, digitize, and basically run your practice through this software, then you have to start looking at what the best fit is. So talk to me about what you bring to the table that is beyond the digital Rolodex.
Yeah, so much. When you think of a digital Rolodex or kind of the base Salesforce and Dynamics platforms, it's really a very simplistic, I've got a contact, There's someone who maybe rolls up into a household. Not even every system does that. Whereas Practifi is designed to cater for a multifamily office with complex relationship trees, many-to-many kind of structures within there, as well as managing all of your other relationships. Maybe they're asset managers that you work with. Maybe you've got a strong network of referrers in a related firm, perhaps an accounting arm to your business or a retirement arm. So we handle all of those elements. Of course, we bring a big industry data model. So whether you're looking at financial assets that people may have, or insurances or retirement products, all of that richness and data is able to be fed in, and it all comes in through API, through the integration suites that we have today and that we're continually expanding. But getting all that information is one thing, but we also want to be able to make that information actionable, and we want to deliver insight. So the system is designed to provide you answers to questions you're not yet thinking. Who do I need to call? What do I need to call them about? What might I have missed from a compliance perspective? And serve that information up to the right person at the right time, just as we're also taking that and putting it through, say, our Propel product, which is looking at that from a much deeper analytics over time perspective. What's the time series? How's my business growing? Who are my most profitable clients? Where am I finding slowness in my workflow process that I can look to drive more efficiency? And then, we work with a lot of firms that are very acquisitive. So how do I quickly and easily onboard that new firm into mine? How do I land them, teach them, give them that embedded knowledge that comes with a well-built system so that they're up and running really quickly?
Excellent. So again, it's funny because you're speaking exactly to what I was saying before, the advantages of being purpose-built around one industry, right? You talked about how whereas Salesforce has to build something generic that is not specific to one vertical, they can have vertical overlays, sure, but you're not purposely designing a contact from day one to be a family member or a household or a supplier or a center of influence and all this other stuff. And when you can develop those, not more than just a template, but an actual object specifically surrounding the needs of that specific type of relationship, it's more powerful than trying to bolt that on later.
That's right. And when we think about the vertical offerings of large providers, if we think about, say, financial services cloud, the secret's in the name. It's for all of financial services, whether you're a bank or you're an advisor. And the last time I looked, the needs of an advisor versus the needs of a retail banker were pretty different. Practifi is not trying to be the solution to the retail banker. It's a solution to the wealth, to the financial intermediaries.
Yeah, for those of you who heard the chime in the background, that was me flipping around the Practifi website and having their autoplay start on me. So you're absolutely right. I mean, you're hitting upon my frustrations with it, but it's still a great platform. Okay, so you built that, but you've also built out a number of platforms. So there's the core platform, which I'm going to mute this one too. There's the core platform, which basically is the basic stuff, right? The fundamental stuff that is valuable to an advisor. So who am I dealing with? What do they own? Who are they connected to? What are my workflows? I mean, first off, how much of that, I know that the objects out of the box. Talk to me about the workflow piece, because that's a big piece. How much of that is out of the box versus you have to design it yourself?
Yeah, so we've refined, I think there's 25 or 27 kind of standard workflows that just ship out of the box. And we've refined those and continue to refine those with our clients. How does this work? What does that look like? But it's also a fairly point and click workflow engine. So unlike needing a developer to go and build flows in Salesforce, what you've got here is something where you can actually take what's there standard, you can add to it, you can clone it and use it as a template and build out your own if you want to do that as well. But we've extended that to think, well, workflow is great. Telling someone they need to do something along the way is one thing. But what we've done is actually embed things like the data capture and data transfer within the workflow itself. So as you're completing a step, and so you're gathering information about to move money, and you capture that in step one, and step two is done by someone else, you don't want to tell them to go somewhere and find the information. So we embed that into the workflow as it makes its way through its journey. That way, when it gets to a compliance check, they can see the information in the same place as they're doing it. So there's a couple of dozen of those workflows there, and we're always adding to them.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're getting most of that from feedback from actual users, right? You probably have a couple of power users consult on. and they're coming to you with these problems. How customizable are they? Once they're actually designed, can I go in and tinker with what gets put into that workflow or what data gets done?
Absolutely, 100%. So you can tinker with what's there, or as I mentioned, you can clone it and blow it apart and add and move around, simplify, expand, change the way that roles work. A lot of our workflow power, not only is the actual engine itself powerful, but the way tasks are assigned within a process is very powerful, because the system is built around the concept of a servicing team who works with the household or the client. And so if you've got someone who leaves the organization, those tasks are assigned to them, are assigned by their role and the client. So if someone else comes in and takes that role, all that workflow continues to work. You haven't got to worry about orphan tasks and how do you move them and what does that look like. The work moves with you. So we've looked at those challenges that happen just every day in advice firms, and how do we keep that nice and simple?
Absolutely. You, in particular, one of the things I think that I see you kind of standing out a little bit more from in terms of compared to other advisor-specific CRM systems I've seen now out there, it's your data analytics and reporting looks far more kind of developed and sophisticated than what I've seen. Care to speak to that?
Yeah, so we make use, of course, within the product, just at a user level, the standard stuff that's available in Salesforce, the kind of reports and dashboards. But they're not very deep and insightful. So we've got away and built what we call Practifi Propel, which is an entire analytics suite. And what that's giving you is just this comprehensive time series data that you can really look at across the business, whether it's at your client cohort, whether it's at your profitability, looking at your financials, looking at tracking an acquisition over time. What did it look like? How, what was our vision for what would happen with our revenue and our client mix through this acquisition, and what's come out the other end of that? So we continue to add more and more dashboards and more capability into that. But we also sell, as part of that, the editing suite. So firms, just to your question before around extensibility, someone who looks at it and says, that's a great start, but I've got this really specific need, they can extend and create their own dashboards using that same toolkit. And our team's there to help them with how, but they have the freedom with what they want to go and create themselves as well.
Excellent. All right. But there's, so they got the core platform, but then you have a bunch of add-ons, each of them having very, very powerful, I'd say, abilities here. So let's go through them. You have your Propel platform. I'm not going to click on them. Normally I'd be clicking on the basic open up. These video are killing me here. So talk about the Propel edition. What does the Propel edition do?
So Propel is what we were just talking about. That's the complex analytics suite that comes with that. Promote is our marketing solution. So it allows you to hook out and run marketing campaigns using, say, a Salesforce Marketing Cloud or Marketo or Campaign Monitor or whatever marketing platform you choose to plug in, MailChimp. It doesn't really matter. We, of course, can do quite a lot with portal solutions. We've done we tend to do those fairly bespoke, but we've done them for end investor. We've done them for B2B. We have a huge amount of power and capability there to bring together that whole user experience. Something that we've done recently that's really excited the market has been our work with Microsoft. What a lot of people don't realize is that Salesforce and Microsoft are in pretty much every business where Salesforce exists, but they don't necessarily play great together on their own. And you can understand the corporate rumblings as to why that might be. But we're a little unique in that Practifi is a strategic partner with Salesforce, but also a strategic partner with Microsoft. And so we've actually gone and created a very tight link between Office 365 today at an email and a calendar level, but we continue to drive down through there. So we'll be doing some work to put Teams inside Practifi and Practifi inside Teams. We're going to be doing some work deeply with SharePoint and working our way through that Microsoft stack, so that you can genuinely have that truly integrated experience where Salesforce can feel a part of the Microsoft experience. And that'll be unique to Practifi, of course.
So it's, Teams. For anyone who follows me on Twitter, they know it's my least favorite productivity software of all time. I get how there's, again, like anything else, no one gets fired for hiring Microsoft. So it's going to be ubiquitous for quite a long time. That's for sure.
It's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, unfortunately. Anyway, So okay, and I mean this speaks to me. I mean, except for the last piece with Microsoft. I mean, you talk about the marketing, you talk about the portal tech, you talk about all that, and I hear that, and I think to myself, okay, so this speaks to the advantage of building off the Salesforce platform, right? These are all capabilities that are the actual underlying base code for doing this sort of stuff in Salesforce exists. You can take that, you can specify around your specific needs, around this specific niche. And I mean, like, I have to say, this is probably why I think you move faster on this stuff than other competitors have.
Completely. I mean, we get a huge advantage, and for a lot of firms, it's understanding that as Salesforce evolves as a platform, we inherit that evolution. So you're not losing anything; you're just gaining the fact that we've done that acceleration for you. Some of the other things that we have in our product suite, we have Protect, which is a comprehensive encryption at rest capability that we leverage out of the Salesforce toolkit. It's there for us to use, and so we just take it and apply more of an industry wrapper for that. So we're able to move and to innovate very quickly. It's one of those things that people who build on the platform themselves, sometimes they overlook in the total cost of ownership. Yes, you can have what you want yourself, but as what you want changes, you're reinvesting in building. But also as the underlying platform changes, you're forced into reinvesting in building because it doesn't stand still, so you can't. And so you have this kind of constant investment cycle that you must go into that you just inherit as part of the release journey with Practifi as a client.
Absolutely an advantage. So, I mean, talk to me about the integrations piece. This is another massive advantage. If you're piggybacking on the App Exchange, Salesforce, like how big is that at this point? It's got to be one of the
I think it'll be the biggest one out there. I think there's a few thousand apps on there, but of course, when you distill that to apps that are relevant from an industry perspective, whether that's digital signature apps or straight through processing apps, or there's any number of them, or we make use of those. We make use of the app that's available for Schwab. There's an Adapar app that plugs into Practifi, as well as those kind of marketing tools and all that kind of stuff. But that's one type of integration that we do. But we've also gone and built very specific integrations at an industry level, and we'll continue to do that as well, where that app process isn't necessarily the best one, but where what you really want is bidirectional APIs, and you want that kind of data flowing. And sometimes people think, well, that I want to stay on Salesforce because I can build that myself. And I always say to them, it's like, again, understand what you're getting into there. It's a non-trivial exercise to go and build a bidirectional API integration to someone else who is then going to go and change their platform, and you have to rebuild it. So
we continue.
Yeah. So it's always buyer beware on that front. Whereas again, our clients have the advantage that we do that for them. So we have a range of those, and again, we continue to invest both with our existing integration partners, but also with new ones. And again, a lot of that comes from our clients. We have a client advisory board. We have a big client success structure that gathers all that information on who and what we should be building.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be easier for these integration partners. Like I'll pick on Precise FP, not pick on, but call them out here, for example. Like they've got a really, really solid integration into Salesforce, right? Mm-hmm. So one would think that, you guys come along and it's like, well, we like to integrate with you. Well, that's probably 90% of the way there or pretty close to it. So
it really is. They're a great example where a Precise FP integration, they started with the Salesforce integration they already had because authentication is done. It's identical. They're mostly hitting account and contact, but we just have a bigger data set. So there's more points of integration available using the same method they've already built.
And as someone who just spent the weekend working on a custom object being in Salesforce being linked into the data center, Precise FP being linked to forms, it is a very powerful tool. So I would think that, they already had the ability to just tie into the data model in Salesforce. So I would think for them, like I said, an off-the-shelf integration would have been a very small project for them in comparison.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. We also see kind of newer firms coming into the market who look at integrating to Salesforce, and what they find is that they're going to go and integrate to something that they know everyone has customized. There's very few standard Salesforce instances out there.
No.
Whereas they know if they integrate to Practifi, they get an integration into the Salesforce platform, but where 90% of the instances are identical. There's a big comprehensive data model that they can predict instead of having to be very narrow in the data model that they can predict when they talk to a native Salesforce implementation.
Yeah, you're right about the entire migration. I mean, it's as someone who went through a Salesforce standard to FSC migration, it's like it's surprisingly more expensive than you would think it is to move from one version of Salesforce to another.
It can be a fraud exercise for sure.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think in general, your entire business model speaks to the emergence of how fintechs happen, right? Like originally, it was everybody was in the technology revolution was building broad solutions. Then it got to narrow, but then it's kind of working back up a bit where platform solutions were developed up the channel, and then now you're developing narrow solutions that are moving quicker, faster, better because they're leveraging the massive tech advantage of giants. I mean, where would the world be right now without AWS figuring out what they did? And we wouldn't have Azure. We wouldn't have Google Cloud Services. We wouldn't have all these. We'd have massive startup costs of buying all those servers, just like you would have had massive startup costs of writing that very first line of code.
Yeah, it's for us. Sometimes people think of Practifi and they think, "Oh, you must hate Salesforce. You guys compete." It's like quite the opposite. It's an incredible platform. It's just too much for most firms to want to try and bite off and to understand what evolving it looks like over time.
I mean, I've described you, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, as a great option for, there's a bunch of very simple off-the-shelf, small 1 to 2 advisor shops where there's some great softwares out there for very small, like that have been guests on this podcast that are excellent to do. Just put in a credit card, get started, no problem. I think there's a little bit more there's a little bit more power to what you do off the shelf that I think really speaks well to the mid-sized teams, and that works well. And I think you've really kind of carved out a solid niche for yourself there.
Yeah, you're spot on. We can be too much technology for those small guys. I think, as you said early on, if you just need a Rolodex, just get a Rolodex. But as soon as you're a mid-sized firm, maybe you've got a few advisor teams or you've got a few different locations, all the way through to a large enterprise or a division of a bank, anyone who's going to really exercise the technology, then we're a great solution because you don't lose any of the flexibility. You just gain such a strong starting position.
So this is where you are currently. Talk to me about where you see yourself going with this. What is it that the platform's not doing that you're working on currently you can tell me about, or that you're hoping it goes to, or hoping it will accomplish in the near future?
So we continue to work really closely with custodial platforms and getting deeper integrations there. As I think everyone knows, that's a slow journey. We continue to push hard in that space. We continue to want to create a more unified experience between the Salesforce and Microsoft stacks because we know the Office 365 world is ubiquitous and we want to make that as seamless as we can. But a huge amount of what we're doing is looking at integrations. How do we continue to bring together that kind of genuine integrated tech stack experience that the industry has just been screaming for years, where people can actually choose the best for their need, safe in the knowledge that it'll integrate? Because the best of breed approach was very flawed when it got into the world of, well, I've got 12 pieces of technology, none of them talk to each other, but each of them are separately excellent. You need to be able to get those 12 pieces of technology talking to each other and be separately excellent.
Agreed. I mean, that's the challenge is that, everybody, anytime someone comes to me, like, I want someone to do all this, it's like, hey, there is no one ring, okay? There is no one ring to rule them all. And if you do find some software that basically hits all these checkboxes, it's going to suck. I can promise you that, right? And versus you can go the best in breed and then do the integrations. But the integrations, I would say that a lot of the integrations I've seen in the U.S. market in particular, because they don't exist in Canada, tend to be pretty superficial, right? It's like, I'm going to pull over this one piece of data or this one little thing. Like some of them can get pretty robust. Like, we use the example Precise FP and Salesforce. I'd say it's a very robust one. There's some things I want to see added to it, but it works quite well. But other ones, it's just like, oh, so you're just telling me they have an account here and here's the balance. Like that's not actionable within, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to replicate the entirety of that best in class functionality within the software because like that's overkill, right? It's the 80-20 rule. I'm only going to use 20% information 8% of the time, but it's still pretty superficial where I think, again, I'm going to keep on beating a dead horse on this one, building off the platform you build off of and having that early stage advantage and all the integrations already off the shelf or integrations that people come with. It's, I see that as a huge strategic advantage in your ability to move on all this.
Yeah, look, we absolutely love it. And to other tech companies who are listening, reach out. It's we love those integrations. Happy to chat to those Canadian companies as well.
I'll make an introduction when we're done. Anyway, so Adrian, before we wrap up, there's 3 questions I ask everybody before we to wrap up on a positive note. The first question is, if you had one wish for something you'd change in your company or the industry as a whole, what would it be?
I would change the expectations of people within the industry around technology. I want them to understand that it's not magic.
Can you also add that there's a learning curve to all of them? Because I will never understand how some people think they're buying a toaster. Like, oh, it doesn't work. I'm just stabbing my thumb into this thing and it's not working. Well, it's like, did you learn how the software works? Do you think you're not going to need to spend some time learning it? It just blows my mind. The second one was, what's been the biggest challenge in a company to where it is today?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's delivering on the promise is the biggest challenge. We look at integrations as an example. We are able to move quickly. We have huge flexibility and power in the platform, as you've talked about a number of times. We're often integrating to people or technologies that don't. And I think the challenge is being able to meet the expectations of our clients in how quickly we can get the things that we all want to get done.
Absolutely. And it's a challenge. Last question is, what excites you the most about what it is you're working on and keeps you fighting, getting up every morning to keep on fighting the good fight of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, look, sometimes it can sound trite, but I care deeply about the advisor to client relationship. And so the thing that gets me motivated is how do I make that better through technology? And every day we get up and we know that there are ways to do that. So that keeps us pretty focused on how we get in there and how we drive a better outcome.
Excellent. Adrian, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. For anyone who's looking for a advisor-based CRM and is more than just a solo operator, please take the time to look at Practifi. And thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jason.
So that was my interview with Adrian Johnstone of Practifi. Hope you enjoyed that. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. Until next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at jasonpereira.ca.